What is good, fellow human beings who root for the New York Jets? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down two potential trade chips the Jets might have this offseason. The Jets' first and second round picks from 2020 had a very disappointing second season. Some of it was their fault, some of it was just some bad luck, and it's led to some chattering amongst Jets fans. Should we just cash these players in for some draft picks and move on from them this offseason? Those two players being Mekhi Becton, offensive tackle, and Denzel Mims, wide receiver. I'm going to break down potential trades for each of these players. What kind of value could we get? And is it worth it? These aren't any official rumors. This is just barbershop talk. Let's get into it, starting with Mekhi Becton. Mekhi Becton, 11th overall pick from two drafts ago. These are his rookie numbers. Obviously, he was hurt. He got rolled up on by Greg Van Roten in week one, but he performed pretty solid as a rookie. Pro Football Focus score of 74.4. Anything above 70 for a rookie is really solid. You could see he did struggle with some penalties, had some sacks allowed, but he was a mauler against the run and in the screen game. Super athletic, just a physical freak. And the injury wasn't really his fault. And I know that he didn't recover in the timeline that the Jets had hoped, but I don't know if it's fair to put that on him to say that he was lazy. He's a 6'7", 350 plus pound dude. A lower body injury is just going to heal differently than it would on like a 190-pound defensive back. So I don't really think it's fair to put that all on him. Now, if we're looking at a potential trade, it'd be fair to say they're not going to get equal value. I don't see a team giving up the 11th overall pick or higher where he was drafted. But if you look at some potential trade candidates, what could we get from Mekhi Becton? I think looking at some teams that need an offensive lineman, starting around 17, the Chargers, they have Rashawn Slater holding down the left side. Could they trade the 17th pick to bring in Mekhi Becton as a right tackle? Maybe. And then you look at the Raiders and the Cardinals at 22 and 23. They've been mocked to offensive linemen in this draft. I really wouldn't want to go any further than that. Honestly, if I'm trading Mekhi Becton, I would need a top 20 pick. He's a physical freak. A lot of people had him rated as the number one offensive lineman coming out that year. And if you look at the kind of players we'd be selecting if we traded there, at 22, 23, maybe we're looking at, maybe one of the linebackers is still there, Nakobe Dean or Devin Lloyd. But, the top 3, 4 edge rushers are gone. The top 3, 4 offensive linemen are gone. Sauce Gardner is going to be gone there. So now we're looking at maybe a Nakobe Dean, maybe one of the second tier corners like a McCreary or McDuffie. I just don't think that's worth it for a possible franchise left tackle in Mekhi Becton. Now, if a team gets desperate, like the Bengals, if they want to make a similar trade that the Texans did for Laramie Tunsil, where they're going to give up multiple first rounders and some change, I'd be willing to listen to that. And then I saw this floated on a Jaguars fans page where they are really desperate to upgrade the offensive line, but maybe they want to spend that first round pick on an edge rusher. And I saw it floated the Jaguars trading their second and third round picks this year, picks 33 and 65 to the Jets for Mekhi Becton. Even that, I'm going to pass on that too. The Jets have a decent amount of draft capital this year where we can bring in some youth and some depth, but what we're lacking is elite talent. And I think Mekhi Becton is an elite talent. I'm going to pass on that trade. And if you make that trade, adding another second and third round pick, like there's only so many rookies you can have on one team, right? So we need to hang on to Mekhi Becton. I think for me, if we're going to talk about trading him, I would need at minimum a top 20 pick, or if it's going to be a pick later like the Bengals, then you're going to have to add more picks onto that. That would be the minimum asking price I would have for Mekhi Becton. It would then leave a hole at tackle. So then are we going to now go have to spend big on a tackle in free agency, like a Trent Brown? Are we going to maybe take a Kwanu at 4, but then we can't take an edge rusher at 4? I just think it's best to hang on to Mekhi Becton. George Fant is a free agent after this year, so Mekhi Becton could be our starting left tackle for the future. Let's hang on to him unless we get blown out of the water with an offer. Then Denzel Mims, I'm not quite as dead set on keeping Denzel Mims as I am with Mekhi Becton. He looked lost on the field last season. It was a pretty rough go of it. There were times where he had penalties for just not knowing the rules, like false starts and not lining up in the right spot. There was one game where he had no catches and two penalties, including a personal foul, a 15-yarder. The Pro Football Focus score of 48, that's just about as low as it can get for a professional wide receiver. He did have some things out of his control. He battled COVID, and he had a rough bout of food poisoning in training camp where he lost like 20 pounds on a pretty lean frame. So that probably affected him for a few months. He flashed a little bit as a rookie with Sam Darnold, but he missed a few games as a rookie too. He was nagged with some lower body injuries. But keep in mind, coming out of the draft, that this draft class that he came out in was one of the deepest draft classes in recent memory. And we didn't just draft him for traits. This wasn't a Stephen Hill kind of draft where you're like, oh, he's big and he runs a fast 40. Denzel Mims balled out at Baylor. He was a good football player. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't panned out in the NFL. I mean, he was just getting shut. He can get no separation last year. So I'm not sure what was going on. I'm not sure if it was the food poisoning. He definitely fell out of favor with the coaching staff. There's been some concerns about work ethic. So in terms of what we could get for Denzel Mims, we'd really be settling for pennies on the dollar. I can't imagine a team wanting to give up more than a fourth or fifth round pick for Mims. And similar with Mekhi Becton, I just don't know if it's worth it to do that because this is the lowest his value is going to be. So it doesn't make sense to move an asset at its lowest possible value. So if it's a fifth round pick or lower, I'm going to say no. I would start considering it with a higher end fourth round pick where you're starting to talk about getting into the top 100 picks. Then I would consider it. Maybe you could take another receiver in that spot who adds value on special teams. You can start over that rookie contract clock and just start over with somebody new there. But I'm leaning towards keeping Denzel Mims. You're going to need to be deep at wide receiver. We had so many injuries last year. If we add another receiver in free agency and then re-sign Braxton Berrios, he probably comes in at number 5 on the depth chart with some upside. So at around a fourth round pick, I'd start considering it. At a third rounder, yeah, I'd probably let Denzel Mims go for a third rounder at this point. So those are my takes on Mekhi Becton and Denzel Mims. I'm definitely keeping Becton unless I'm blown out of the water. And Denzel Mims, I can kind of take it or leave it at this point. Would let him go for a third rounder. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and go Jets.